Have you ever noticed how some people seem to possess an almost supernatural command over their surroundings without uttering a single word? They do not raise their voices. They do not plead. They simply withdraw. And in an instant, everything transforms. The atmosphere shifts. People begin to question, to pursue, to feel. Now imagine if you employed the same strategy. If you ceased to react immediately to every provocation, if you elected silence over the automatic reply, retreat over explosion, what do you believe would occur? That is precisely the point. When you stop being perpetually available, emotionally, physically, psychologically, the world around you enters a state of crisis because people have grown accustomed to controlling you through your reactions, through your impulses, through your predictability. But the day you choose to withdraw, the game changes entirely. And those who believed they knew you come to realize they know absolutely nothing about you. Machiavelli understood the power of perceived inaccessibility. Now consider this. When you become unreachable, who truly grows desperate, who becomes irritated, who attempts to provoke you merely to elicit some familiar reaction, this reveals far more about them than it does about you. And it chiefly exposes the extent to which you are being manipulated without your awareness. You continue to offer yourself to please others, to maintain a fragile peace, to avoid losing people who, in their depths, were never truly with you. And with every coerced agreement, every instant response, every emotional reaction, you surrender a fragment of your energy. At the day's end, what remains? Exhaustion, frustration, an emptiness you cannot name. But I will tell you why. It is because you are too available for those who do not deserve even a minute of your silence. This is not about turning your back on the world. It is about choosing yourself. It is about learning the process of becoming whole, authentic, complete. And this process begins when you understand that silence can hold more power than 1,000 arguments. That withdrawal, when it stems from awareness and not from escape, is an act of supreme authority. So I ask you now, looking directly into your eyes, how long will you allow yourself to be controlled by the emotions of others? How long will you react like a puppet each time someone prods at your wounds? Perhaps it is time to sever those strings, to withdraw, to become a mystery. Because when you stop being available, everything changes. You have been taught to be constantly present, to reply swiftly, to please, to say yes even when you long to say no. Since childhood, you have been conditioned to believe that your worth is tied to how available you are to others. But here is a truth perhaps no one has delivered to you with such clarity. This excessive availability is not a virtue. It is a prison, and as long as you persist in believing you must be accessible at all times, you will be manipulated, drained, and forgotten the moment you are no longer useful. Do you know why? Because being always available renders you predictable. And everything predictable becomes a tool. People begin to use you as an emotional emergency button. They press it when they desire attention, relief, validation, and then they return you to the shelf. You fail to see this because you are trapped in the illusion that being present for everyone will ensure someone is present for you. But it does not work that way. Machiavelli spoke of the masks we wear to be accepted. And it is this very mask that keeps you overly available. You claim you are fine when you are suffocating. You respond to messages instantly even when you are depleted. You explain, justify, and defend yourself as if you owe the world a debt. But the truth is, the more you place yourself at the center of another's stage, the more you vanish from your own. Being perpetually available is a subtle form of self-abandonment. It is a disguised quest for approval, a way to avoid rejection, an attempt to control the image others hold of you. But this control carries a price, and the price is your peace. It is your vital energy being distributed as if it were infinite, when in reality it is severely limited. Those who demand your constant availability do not want you. They want what you provide: validation, company, distraction, emotional comfort. But when you change, when you establish a boundary, when you refuse to react, these same people grow irritated, accuse you, call you strange. It is not because you changed. It is because you cease to be functional for them. And here is the most crucial point. The more available you are, the less value others assign to you, because what is overly abundant becomes commonplace. No one respects what they do not have to earn. No one values what is always there. So now, stop and think. Who genuinely deserves your time? Who deserves your attention, your presence, your listening? Or better yet, who deserves your absence? But before you answer, we must understand one essential thing. Why do we react so intensely? Why do we yield so readily? What lies behind this nearly automatic compulsion to respond, to justify, to please? The answer resides in what we might call psychic energy. For your energy is all you possess, and if you do not learn to protect it, someone will use it against you. Machiavelli did not view power as a matter of brute force, but of calculated conservation. The question is, are you choosing where your energy flows, or are you letting the world decide for you? Each time you react impulsively, you waste psychic energy. When you defend yourself against a criticism unworthy of attention, when you rise to a provocation merely to prove you are right, when you engage in fruitless debates, when you strive to please those who do not value you, you are spending your inner strength on what does not nourish you. And the principle holds, that which you resist persists. The more you react, the more you bind yourself to the conflict. People who live emotionally drained are not weak. They are misdirected. And do you know what happens to someone who exists in exhaustion? They become vulnerable. And when you are vulnerable, you become easy prey. Manipulative, opportunistic, and emotionally needy individuals can sense this. They notice you do not know how to guard your energy, that you react to everything, that you are always trying to solve the world's problems, and they take advantage. A healthy psyche is one that knows how to retain energy within itself. This means knowing how to say no without guilt, how to remain silent without feeling cowardly, how to observe before acting. Because true power lies not in reacting, but in choosing when and how to act. And this is only possible when you know yourself well enough to recognize your own impulses. How many nights have you lost over an unresolved conversation? How many hours have you spent ruminating on what you should have said or wondering why someone treated you poorly? This is energy draining away with no return. You are keeping ghosts alive that should have died long ago, feeding dynamics that exist only because you insist on responding. Psychic energy is like a force field. When well guarded, it creates presence. You enter a room and command respect without speaking. But when poorly managed, you become invisible, reactive, fragile, and the world shows no mercy to those who yield easily. Therefore, begin to observe your own triggers. What makes you react automatically? What causes you to lose your center? These are the exact points where your energy escapes, and that is where you must work. Not to become cold or indifferent, but to become selective, to become sovereign over yourself. And here comes one of the most potent revelations. When you conserve your energy, you break the projections that others place upon you. This unsettles people profoundly, for we now enter the territory of silent manipulation. You believe you are in control. You think your reactions are conscious choices, but the truth is darker. Most of your emotional responses are programmed, and those who understand this manipulate you with ease. Opportunistic people do not need to shout, threaten, or force situations. They simply press the buttons you have left exposed, and you react every time. This is the mechanism of projection, but there is another side few notice. While others project onto you, you also become the receptacle for these images. And the more emotionally available you are, the more you become a blank canvas for these projections. You know that acquaintance who only reaches out in crisis, that partner who always needs you to save the day, that person who praises you only as long as you are useful. None of this is accidental. They are not relating to you. They are relating to the idea of you, to the role you have agreed to play. And why do you agree? Because you fear disappointment, you fear not being loved, you fear abandonment. The most effective manipulation does not occur in shouting. It happens in the silence of guilt, when you feel you owe something to the other, when you believe you must be available, must help, must understand, even when it destroys you from within. And here is the central point. The manipulator does not need to control you directly. They only need you to keep reacting the same way. But when you stop reacting, the game breaks. When you start saying no, responding with silence, withdrawing instead of explaining, the projections begin to crumble. The mask they placed on you falls. This unsettles people because they no longer know who you are. And worse, they are now forced to look at themselves. Not everyone is prepared for that. Your unavailability becomes a threat because it forces others to confront their own emptiness. The silence you offer reveals the internal noise they do not wish to hear. Then comes the attack, the criticism, the emotional drama. Not because you are wrong, but because you stopped serving as a convenient mirror. When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle, the shadow of the other begins to emerge. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as an escape. But what about you? Are you ready to endure the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready to bear the silence that follows the rupture? Because it is precisely within that silence that a new kind of power is born. The modern world is noisy. Everyone wants to be heard, to reply instantly, to win pointless debates and prove their point, even at the cost of their own peace. But there is a power few know and even fewer master, the power of silence. Not the silence of passivity or cowardice, but conscious, strategic, brutally lucid silence. The kind of silence that is not an absence, but an amplified presence. Machiavelli saw strategic retreat not as weakness, but as a repositioning of strength. When you stop reacting, you begin to observe, and in observing, you see patterns that previously went unnoticed. Emotional repetitions, games of manipulation, cycles of self-sabotage. Silence allows for lucidity, and lucidity is dangerous for those who live to control you. Have you noticed how some people panic when you do not respond, when you do not explain yourself, when you simply disappear? It is not because they miss you. It is because your silence removes their narrative control. While you speak, you are still in their game. But when you are silent, you change the rules, and that unbalances anyone who thrives on your reaction. True silence is not the absence of voice. It is mastery over your own energy. It is the refusal to be pulled into someone else's emotional current. It is the conscious choice not to engage in battles unworthy of your wear and tear. The process of becoming who you truly are requires this distancing, because only in silence can you listen to yourself without the world's interference. But do not be mistaken. Silence carries a price. It will distance you from people who only valued you for the role you played. It will make you incomprehensible to those who only saw you through their own projections. It will make you seem cold, distant, arrogant. But all of this is merely a reaction from those who never wished to engage with your depth, only with your utility. Here is the hard truth. The more you mature, the more selective you become with your words, because you understand that each sentence is an energetic investment, and not everyone deserves access to your truth. Sometimes, silence is not a retreat. It is sovereignty. It is the language of those who no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces the other to deal with their own thoughts, with their own internal noise. This discomfort reveals more about them than any argument you could make. You do not need to explain your absence. It explains itself, and those who feel threatened by it reveal how much they depended on your predictability to maintain their own sense of control. But the most powerful silence is not the one that disturbs another. It is the silence that reconstructs you from within, the silence that connects you to something beyond external approval. It is in this internal space, free from the demands of others, that you begin to recover your vital energy and reconnect with your essence. It is not enough to simply cut out external noise. You must relearn how to use your energy consciously, to choose where it goes, where it remains, and, most importantly, where it should never be wasted. It is time to become selective with your own soul. Understanding this intellectually is useless if in practice you continue saying yes when you mean no, responding to irritating messages, participating in empty conversations, and maintaining relationships that exist only out of inertia. Awareness without action is merely another form of self-deception. True transformation begins when you decide firmly to become selective, and this requires emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability is not about being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It is about no longer being accessible to anyone at any time for any reason. It is about taking control of your own energy, your own time, your own peace. This starts with small actions, not responding immediately, breathing before reacting, leaving a discussion before being dragged into chaos, turning off your phone without guilt, saying not today, saying I am not interested, saying I will not get involved. But here is the most important part. You do not need to justify your absence. You do not need to explain your silence. You owe nothing to anyone but yourself. And this, for many people, is unforgivable, because when you refuse to explain yourself, you strip them of the power to keep you within an emotional narrative where you are always the helpful, the understanding, the accessible one. Every process of genuine self-formation moves through a period of isolation. Not a depressive isolation, but a sacred one. A time of inner retreat where you relearn to listen to your own voice without the world's interference. Where you rebuild your identity not from the gaze of others, but from your own center. Want to know a good measure of your evolution? Observe who begins to distance themselves from you when you become more reserved. Observe who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Observe who accuses you of having changed when you finally start to protect yourself. These are not signs that you are wrong. They are proof that you have begun to free yourself. Being unavailable is uncomfortable at first. You will feel guilt. You will think you are being selfish. You will be told you are too harsh. But this is part of the deconstruction. You have spent a lifetime conditioned to put yourself second. It is natural that change causes discomfort, both in you and in everyone who benefited from your old version. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you are saying yes to yourself. When you withdraw from a toxic environment, you reaffirm that your peace is worth more than any false connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, you begin to be respected, even if only by a few. But not everyone is ready for this kind of presence, because your emotional absence will expose wounds they do not wish to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your emotional availability to feel in control. And it is at this moment the rupture comes. With it comes pain, loneliness, estrangement, the feeling you are losing something when in fact you are finally freeing yourself. But what happens after that? What comes after the distancing? What is born from the silence? When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins to happen. First comes the silence, an uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. You wonder if you did the right thing, if you are too harsh, if you are losing people who claim to like you. But gradually this silence transforms. It begins to cleanse, to calm, to heal, and then comes solitude. But not the solitude of absence. It is the solitude of total presence, your own presence. The solitude of the strong, the solitude of one who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. And in that space where confusion once lived, clarity enters. Where there was anxiety, peace enters. Where there was neediness, a new strength enters. The strength of being whole within yourself. The process of becoming who you really are requires you to distance yourself from the collective, to remove the mask, to walk alone for a time. And that is exactly what you are doing when you decide to become unavailable. You are not fleeing the world. You are returning to yourself. It is at this point you cease to be a reactor and become a creator. You stop being shaped by circumstances and begin to shape your reality from within. The people unsettled by your absence reveal they never wanted you. They wanted the role you played. And now that you no longer perform it, They do not know what to do with you. And that is liberating. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. You will distance yourself from places, but you will reconnect with your essence. You will be misunderstood, but finally you will begin to be respected. Because when you are no longer available for anything, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. Do not be mistaken. This is a rebirth, a new beginning, the start of a life where you are no longer available for emotional crumbs, for mind games, for emptiness disguised as affection. Now you only accept what resonates with your peace, with your truth, with your wholeness. If you have made it this far, it is because a part of you is already ready for this new path. A part of you has already understood that being loved means nothing if it requires you to abandon yourself. And that true self, love begins when you choose yourself, even if it costs you a period of solitude. Now tell me, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being you? If this message resonated with you, if it made sense, write it down. Let us see how many are ready for this transition.